Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Mercury and Jupiter conjoining in the early degrees of Gemini as they are both coming off trines to Pluto in Aquarius, while Venus is also at the heart of the Sun. So if you missed it, yesterday we also looked at Venus Cazimi in depth. I'll be reiterating some of the same things that we said yesterday in today's video, while also looking at the combined effects of Mercury and Jupiter in Gemini. Now, we also have a new moon coming up in Gemini this week, and we're going to be taking a look at Venus and the Sun going through squares to Saturn in Pisces, also from the sign of Gemini. So it's a big week astrologically, big start to the month of June. And that's our goal for today. We're going to look at this airy combination of events all happening at once in Gemini. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds to click the thumbs up button. We really appreciate when you do that. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I am also going to share with you, we're going to go over to the Nightlight website to promote a couple of things. Go to the events page, click on live talks on June 13th. My next live talk is on the 12th house, the world that we struggle to see. This is about the healing potential of the 12th house in your birth chart. Very practical information in this talk on how to work with the 12th house configuration in your chart. We'll be covering every rising sign and every paired 12th house sign that goes with every rising sign as a kind of archetypal compare and contrast to those two signs. There's a lot of insight that can be gained just by looking at the contrast between the first and the 12th. So anyway, we're going to be doing that and talking a little bit more about the 12th house in general and how to understand it on June 13th from 7 to 9 p.m. If you can't make the talk live after you register, you do get the live link as well as a recording link later. In July, I'm doing a talk on Uranus and Gemini. If you missed it, I did Neptune and Aries last month and a whole bunch of talks on the outer planets in love and relationships the previous month. So you can check those out on the shop page or there on the live talk page. Under courses, first year course begins, excuse me, June 16th is the next starting point, and it's not too late to register. Go to the bottom of the page, you will find that there are need-based tuition options. So if you need a little help to make the program happen, you can use the tuition assistance to choose a payment plan. We ask that people use the regular prices if you can afford them. If you can't, because you have a limited or limited budget or you're experiencing some challenges financially, please do use the tuition assistance. We're glad to let that be a service to people. And then the horary program also begins coming up here. Let's click on horary. After today's talk, you will hear me telling you about horary astrology. You'll get to see a live, kind of a horary reading from my practice that I'm performing. And you'll learn more about the horary program. You need to have a little bit of a background in traditional astrology to join that program, which starts on June 22nd. There's tuition assistance available for that one as well. So any questions you have about any of our programs as you're checking them out, feel free to email us info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, now let's turn our attention to the real-time clock and get a feel for the transits that are coming through. Whoops, back myself up. All right, so here's what I want to show you. If we go back just some hours, we're going to see that the conjunction between Mercury and, I'm going to go by minute so I can get it exact. So here's Mercury and Jupiter exactly conjoined. This is Tuesday morning, 5 in the morning, Central Time here in Minneapolis. And you'll see that Mercury and Jupiter are exactly conjoined at 2 degrees and 12 minutes. What I want you to notice is that Venus and the Sun simultaneously are only 4 minutes apart, which means that Venus is Cazimi. So we have a Mercury-Jupiter conjunction at the same time that we have a Venus-Sun conjunction, or the Venus Cazimi. Mercury and Jupiter are coming off from trines to Pluto within less than half a degree. So this is a powerful configuration that also precedes a new moon in Gemini. Really, really interesting stuff. The other thing we have to consider is the fact that as the new moon comes through, and we'll be covering this as the week goes on, it's not really our focus today, but just previewing where we're heading. If we take this forward just a touch, you'll see that, let's give ourselves the new moon here. The new moon features this triple conjunction while the Venus and the Sun are still just within half a degree. And now we have all of this new moon energy coming through as Venus and the sun are also starting to engage with squares to Saturn in Pisces. So that is what we're going to be unpacking for the rest of this week. We're going to be looking at the new moon and the squares to Saturn. Today, we're not quite there yet. All we're going to be doing for today is looking at the combined qualities of Venus Cazimi and Mercury Jupiter conjoined while trining Pluto. So in order to do that, I have come up with 5 themes. You guys know I like my lists. I have 5 things to watch for. You're welcome. And hopefully it's easy enough to follow. And I've picked themes that are obvious enough that you'll be able to recognize the energies at play. So what is the number one thing to watch for given this Mercury-Jupiter combination with Venus at the heart of the sun, both Mercury and Jupiter trining Pluto in Aquarius, this very airy situation, by the way, all of these 5 planets combining in air. First of all, Mercury-Jupiter, the parts and the whole are having a conversation. I heard recently one of the auditions for the co-host spot from a Nightlight alumni, they were talking about Mercury and Jupiter as representing, like, if you looked at a puzzle box, her name was Dana, and she's a Nightlight alumni. And I thought it was a really neat thing she said, where she said that you look at the puzzle box and that the cover of the puzzle and what the whole thing is supposed to look like, that's Jupiter. Whereas Mercury looks at all of the puzzle pieces individually and maybe starts grouping them. Oh, here's the edge pieces, here's pieces of this color. And that's a really good way of thinking about Mercury and Jupiter and their relationship with one another, where Mercury tends to be about the analytical, deconstructive mind. And it's the magic and chaos of the deconstructive mind that takes things apart in order to understand them. Whereas Jupiter tends to build its understanding through progressive coherence, building toward a bigger whole so that you get the full picture of the puzzle all put together. When the two of them come together and Mercury is the host, and we know that Jupiter it's a little difficult for Jupiter to be in a Mercury ruled sign, Virgo or Gemini, because it's naturally in a place that's deconstructive, and it tends to be a planet that likes to build that kind of abundant, overflowing state of coherence, control, like that. So when you put the two together, though, it's really interesting because we start to get something like a conversation between a vision of the whole and all of the parts, or the process of deconstruction that might be required in order to build a new whole or to revise an existing structure of some kind. So I really like this because it's like bringing a magnifying glass to structures in our lives. They could be moral, spiritual, philosophical, relational, professional, personal, with our health, our body. Just any area of your life where right now you're sort of taking out the microscope or the magnifying glass, whatever you want to call it, and looking at all the individual parts for the sake of building a better or more coherent whole, or revising or editing the big picture somehow. When these two planets get together, it's like strategy. Where you can do both, as someone who's a creative writer, I would think about it like this. When you're doing the work of creative revision on a chapter, right? You've written a chapter and you're reworking the chapter for the purpose of a better creative dissemination. You're not editing it for grammar, punctuation, syntax, diction. It's not that kind of editing. It's more about, did this chapter of the book, or did this story convey the message with the right mood and sentiments? And did I use the right words and the right turns of phrase to express all of this in the way that, that feels best, that looks best, that conveys what I was trying to say in the best possible way? So I like when Mercury and Jupiter are coming together in a Mercury ruled sign, because it's sort of like an opportunity for deconstruction, analysis, critique, but without losing some larger sense of why we're doing what we're doing and how we can utilize this energy, not just to tear things apart, but to also build things up while we're revising or editing, so to speak. So the parts in the whole are having a conversation. You could also think about this as that ideas and thoughts that are critical and analytical become more important. They take on greater, they have more gravity. So it's like your thoughts, your words, your ideas, your criticisms, your questions, these things all become amplified and bigger right now. And it also just well, I'm not going to jump. I'm not going to jump ahead of myself. I have this later on my list. Number 2, new ideas, strategies, or designs on behalf of Venus. So now just apply everything we just said about this kind of creative, big picture editing, critiquing, thinking, strategizing, maybe revising. But it's being done on behalf of a new Venusian value. Like, what does Venus love? What does Venus like? What does Venus find pleasurable or desirable? That could be in love, in relationships, friendships. It could be with respect to sexuality or pleasure or fun or joy or beauty or appearance or aesthetic or art, presentation. Think of all of the domains of Venus. And while Venus is at the heart of the sun, it's as though Venus is being reconstituted. And remember, all of this is coming off a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Venus's sign, right? Very closely following after it. It's as though now we have the power to start shifting our ideas and our thoughts about what we want Venus to be. And simultaneously, Mercury and Jupiter are a kind of new value or vision of Venus. That's the way I would put it all together. It may sound a little abstract, but just think to yourself right now, where is Venus telling me that she wants something different? Love, sex, relationships, beauty, aesthetics, appearance, design, art, embodied feelings of pleasure. Like, where is she saying something's going to be different? Where are new ideas coming about with respect to relationships or sexuality? And then what kinds of conversations are taking place? What kind of planning or strategizing or revisioning or critiquing is happening at the same time to push all of this together for the sake of something that is new and in service of Venus? Okay, hope that all made enough sense. Number 3, I think this is really important. I think I just had a dog hair in my mouth. Ideas and the right people or environments. This is really important because Venus is naturally social and relational. Air signs are naturally social and relational as well. Air signs love stimulating ideas and people and thoughts and communication. As a rule, Venus in an air sign is very social. So right now, it's not just what does Venus want or desire for the sake of subjective personal pleasure, although that's part of it, but it's also how is that defined or how is that being reworked with respect to our social experience in life? It means the right people, the right environments, the right kinds of conversations, the right kinds of people, the right kinds of social stimulation or joy or satisfaction or creative collaboration are all really important considerations. It's not just the right ideas, it's not just the right values or visions of Venus, it's also the right social circumstances that support that. And that's a big part of how we can understand all of the air. Number 4, remember that Mercury and Jupiter are getting together as they trine Pluto in Aquarius. There is an element of this that I think for a lot of people will express itself in terms of what we are being excited by mentally or intellectually. There is a strong emphasis on learning, studying, developing, or evolving in a craft, maybe one that we already know, maybe one that we've already been practicing for a long time. For me, that would probably be astrology or guitar or bodybuilding, the kinds of things that I love to do and I'm always learning new things about, no matter how long I've been doing them. For all of us, it could be something that we're developing and learning more about, or for some of us, it might represent something totally new that we're going to start learning or studying for the first time or getting more serious about for the first time. It's kind of like, I've been fiddling around with the guitar, now I'm going to take lessons. Whatever the case may be, the trines, first of all, Mercury and Jupiter getting together in an air sign is just fantastic when it comes to a course of learning, critical study, questioning, curiosity, new teachers, or educational material that stimulates us and maybe starts also putting us in contact with different kinds of people or communities or groups or subjects. At the same time, the trine to Pluto in Aquarius gives us that kind of big overview of a subject. Like you think of the field of engineering or the field of design or the field of astrology. Pluto in Aquarius has the power to captivate our imaginations on the level of some very large intellectual landscape. And then simultaneously, it can plug us into that space with the right teachers, systems, lessons, lectures, books, so the technology of learning or the medium through which learning can start to occur is also implicated by Mercury, Jupiter in an air sign, trine Pluto in Aquarius. It could also be that we're deepening, revising, or shifting an approach to something we've already been studying. But regardless, it's a great transit. For following some kind of intellectual magnetism. I mean, Venus at the heart of the sun, yes, it's about love and relationships, but it's also, there's a word, and I've asked you guys to remind me of it like 10 times in the past, and I still can't remember it. It's a word that means someone who is sexually turned on by intelligence. Some people are like, physically I'm turned on by this or that, but there's some people who are also like actually turned on sexually by intelligence. Oh, I really like someone who's super smart, So the point is that Venus at the heart of the sun can amplify our attraction to things that are intelligent. And that can mean for us nothing more. It doesn't have to mean anything sexual, but it could mean that suddenly you find yourself deeply attracted to a conversation, a topic, a subject, something that you want to learn about becomes very magnetizing because you're attracted to it. That can happen on the level of the mind. Sometimes we think that attraction is only physical. Oh, I'm attracted to that color or that texture or that body or whatever the case may be, or that animal. That's beautiful to me. But so too, for many people, are ideas, thoughts, environments of learning, and social stimulation. For many people, that is incredibly attractive. So consider that as well. Number 5, tech, media, communication, social dynamism, flirtation, fun, play. I just slap together a list of things that are kind of like it's like the grab bag of this transit. Anything in tech or media could be greatly amplified right now. In communication in general, communication dynamics, exciting, unexpected, a little playful. There's a social dynamism at work right now that's, lots of different people and conversations and thoughts flying around. That's kind of fun. It could also be a little busy and maybe some discernment is needed. We're going to see these squares to Saturn and Pisces really giving us a little bit of a reality check if there's any kind of overly stimulated and not so grounded quality. We'll see that check from Saturn later in the week. But this is a flirtatious, fun, playful transit that's igniting a desire within us to explore and open ourselves through curiosity, play, wonder, and different kinds of new bubbling social connections that are coming in. So I'm going to leave it there for today. Those are my 5 themes to watch for, given Mercury, Jupiter conjoining at the same time that Venus is at the heart of the sun. If you want more on Venus at the heart of the sun, check out yesterday's video. If you stick around after I sign off right now, you can learn more about the upcoming horary program. I think I've got like a 10-minute informational video about that class that you can listen to. Come study horary with us, or in our year 1 program, speaking of good times to study, this June, as Jupiter and Pluto are trine in an air sign, it's an incredible time to begin a serious, immersion into astrology, whether that's just for your own personal spiritual transformation or because you want to practice professionally or both. It's a great time to study. This is one of those transits that I mentioned over the years. Some of the enrollment periods coincide with really good transits for studying, and this is one of them. So be sure to check it out. And that's it for today. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you guys more about the upcoming horary astrology program, which begins later in June. And I hope that if you have never learned anything about horary, that you will, at least in listening to this, be exposed to horary astrology, have a little bit of an understanding of what it is. And if not now, then maybe sometime in the future, you can take time to study it. It is one of the forms of astrology that dates back to the earliest eras of astrology, the Hellenistic era, the medieval era, the early Indian period of astrology. And it is a branch of astrology that is concerned with specific predictive questions. So, for example, a horary question is usually formed in terms of a yes or no answer, and it is cast from the location of the astrologer at the time that the astrologer receives the question. So a typical horary question might be, will I get the job? Or will we get married? Or my cat went missing, will she come back? There are applications of horary astrology that involve the location of missing items, like where is my missing pen? Or where is, I actually helped a farmer one time locate a missing bull that had gotten out of the pasture. So it's a really, really fascinating form of astrology. It's very old, and it is like the birth chart of a question, a predictive question. So again, if I receive a question from someone and it's like, will I get the job? Then I cast that chart at the time I get the question. I usually use the receipt of the email time. And then I cast a chart for that question. And there are a series of traditional techniques that have been around for a very long time, thousands of years, that are used to determine the answer to that question. So with that in mind, let me show you a chart and you can learn, see what it's like in real time. So this chart is, the question that was asked is, will my spouse keep his job? This is a woman who had some very good reason to worry that her spouse might be getting laid off. And so she wanted to know so she could prepare herself, is he in fact going to be laid off from his job? And so when I received that question, that's a horary question. When I receive it at 9:03 a.m. on April 10th of 2023, a little over a year ago here in Minnetonka, Minnesota, where I live, I cast a chart that becomes the birth chart of that question. I then use a series of techniques, and that's what you're going to learn in the horary program, are those techniques that go into answering all different kinds of questions. Questions about jobs, questions about money, questions about health, questions about marriage or relationships, questions about babies, questions about in pregnancy. I mean, you name it. And even missing pets and people and missing items. You see a lot of different approaches in horary. And so over the course of a year, we study those approaches to different kinds of questions, and we practice and practice with different charts of different questions, learning the techniques so that we can have this predictive tool in our kit as an astrologer. So anyway, here's a question: will spouse keep his job? In horary, what happens is you are always looking at the planets that represent the people and aspects of the question. The person asking the question is called the querent. The querent is always given the ruler of the ascendant and usually the moon as a co-signifier of the querent. So in this case, Gemini is rising. So we're going to give Mercury to the querent and the moon. Well, we can see the moon is sitting right on the cusp of the 7th house of marriage, which shows us that the querent, the person asking the question, is indeed really concerned about their spouse. The placement of the moon gives that away because it's sitting on the cusp of the 7th, which is going to be the house of the partner. So you see little things like that. They're a little wink that you have you have a radical chart, so to speak. Now, the 7th house ruler is going to be the spouse. That's Jupiter, since Sagittarius sits on the 7th house cusp. In horary, we use quadrant-based houses because the theory was all developed through quadrant-based house systems, which is interesting. So this is the only place in my practice that I teach from and use a quadrant-based house system, not whole sign. Anyway, it's really fascinating to look at this chart because Jupiter is going to represent the spouse. So we can see Jupiter over here, about to be conjoined by the sun. Then we look at the spouse's job. And the spouse's job is going to be the 10th house from the spouse. The 10th house from the 7th is going to be the ruler of the 4th. That's called derived houses. This is something that appears in horary quite a bit. So if we take the spouse as house 1 and we count 1 through 10 from house 7, we get to the cusp of house 4 for the 10th from the 7th, or the spouse's job. That is the sun. So here we see that the sun, exalted sun in Aries, is about to conjoin Jupiter. This means that Jupiter is combust. And when Jupiter is combust like that so badly and the sun is about to conjoin it, that is a moment of death for Jupiter. So the job, we know that combustion from a planet like that is often implied in the charts of death, or that's a condition of debility for Jupiter at the hands of the exalted sun. And Jupiter is, of course, sitting on the 12th house cusp, which is the derived 6th from the 7th house of the spouse, a place that was associated with misfortune. So we can see that this is a very clear indication that that Jupiter is being debilitated by, burnt up by the job. And that moment that's coming of the conjunction could be positively looked at as maybe a death and rebirth of your career. But the first thing that's happening is the death. When it is a possibility built into the question that he could be one of the people that's about to be laid off at his company, and you have this kind of symbolism, this is very clearly a yes, your husband is about to be laid off because of that combustion and the upcoming combustion and conjunction from the sun. Now you might say, what about Cazimi? Doesn't the Cazimi mean like a rebirth? Yeah, but not first, right? The first thing that happens is that Jupiter is being burnt up by the sun. When the sun is the job and Jupiter is the spouse, and there is a possibility that this kind of event happens, then yes, that is exactly what happens. We can also see, if we take out the outer planets, which is something we toggle back and forth in our horary class, We take out the outer planets, and we can also see that the very next thing that is going to happen is the moon, as an indicator of the flow of events, is about to trine the sun and then immediately hit Jupiter, which means that the moon is also translating the light from the sun to Jupiter. And when the sun is acting here as a malefic, burning Jupiter up, this is another sign that the flow of events is going to lead that malefic sun to eliminate Jupiter. The malefic sun only in this context because Jupiter is combust. So anyway, these are little rules of horary, and there's a ton of them, right? For every different kind of question, there are different ways of assigning planets to the parts of a question, and there are different techniques that we use to answer the question. In that case, the judgment of the chart was, it does look as though your husband is going to be laid off. And indeed, that was the outcome. Her husband was laid off within a week. So the way that I framed it in the answer was very uplifting, because I said, this is when we see this kind of event, a Jupiter Sun Cazimi, which we've had in the sky recently just now too, as I'm making this, that can be a sign of rebirth. So even if there's a death and a loss here of job, the opportunity for this to be a career reset is also implied by the transition of this Jupiter-Sun conjunction. And she did write to me later in the summer last year to tell me that he found a new job. So, and it was indeed a positive reset. So half of the art of horary is delivering the news. How do you deliver a predictive result without increasing someone's anxiety, in a way that's constructive? How do we take what we see and translate it for someone when the question is predictive? And there's often a lot of, people have a lot of emotion invested in the outcome. So this is a beautiful form of astrology. If you are interested in studying it, here is how to register. You go over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And you are going to go to the courses page. And when you're on the courses page, you're going to click on the horary course. You need to have a background in understanding dignities, aspects, and house meanings. And then it starts on June 22nd. At the bottom, you will find that there is need-based tuition assistance. And there are also payment plans that you can utilize, and a one-time payment saves a little bit of money. So, but if you need tuition assistance because it would be impossible for you to take the program otherwise, please be sure to check that out and come study horary. It's an amazing, amazing form of astrology. If I could do nothing but practice horary, I would, because it is so interesting to see the unique picture of each situation come to life in the context of a horary reading. There's no birth chart needed for it either. It's amazing that astrology can work that way. We always think, it has to work off from a birth chart. No. We can use astrology just like we use tarot cards. Cast them out at the moment a unique question comes up. Cast a chart at the moment of a question, and you have a series of techniques and approaches that can help you answer it. So that's horary in a nutshell. I hope to see you guys there, and thanks for listening.